Bow Hunters, what is up? This episode is brought to you by the Bow Hunters Challenge. What? So, since I started the podcast, I've constantly had people ask me to design something for them as a bow hunter. And so I finally said, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to create it. So I've gone ahead and I've created the Bow Hunters Challenge. It's a 12-week challenge. It is going to be awesome, guys. And starting firstly, officially, it kicks off on the 1st of February. There is an early bird sign-up, which is going till the 24th of January. So if you guys want to get on board for a cheaper amount, then you can jump across to bowhunterschallenge.com. It's bowhunterschallenge.com. And you guys can get a cheaper sign up for that one. But a 12-week challenge is going to be encompassing of your nutrition. It's got some training program stuff there. So how to move, some of the best things that we can be doing as bow hunters to make sure that you are not injuring ourselves, making sure that our shoulders stay fit and ready to pull back the bow all year round, as well as some mindset stuff. And really, this whole program really dives into lifestyle. It dives into some of the biggest things that we do day in, day out that can make a big shift just by tweaking a few things that you're already doing. So if you want to learn more, head across to bowhunterschallenge.com and you will see all of the information there. Thanks heaps, team. Hey there, and welcome to Becoming a Bow Hunter. I'm your host, Matty, and join me and our guests as we take the quality of meat back into our own hands, searching the wild for free-ranged animals to harvest as ethically as we can. I interview a variety of specialists from the bow hunting community to help fast-track your journey as a bow hunter. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this chinwag on one of your favorite topics in the world, bow hunting. Bow hunters, what is up? Welcome back to another episode, 2021. Happy New Year. I hope you guys have had a good little break, and I hope you're ready to hit 2021 super hard and super fun. I think it should be a good year. Obviously, we've had some shit fights already, but that's just what COVID's been giving for all of us. So I'm hoping it kind of moves on and we get to get out and do our hunting as per usual, or as we want to this year. I'm hoping you guys get to do the same thing. So this first episode of the year is actually with Dylan Smith. He is in northern New South Wales. He's a keen outdoorsman. He's getting into his traditional archery. He does a lot of cod fishing, and since this podcast has caught some absolute ripper cods. But yeah, I think it's a great little episode. We talk a little bit about in the kitchen, some of his favorite things to do in the kitchen, but also some of his lifestyle things he's doing in regards to just living off the land from his little property that he's got. And just some of the tips along the way. As he says, he's still becoming a bow hunter, and really that's what the podcast is all about. So he gives up some fine little tips, and I hope you guys enjoy this one. Alrighty, bow hunters, welcome back. I have Dylan Smith on the line. Dylan, welcome.
Thanks, bud. Thanks for having me.
Very welcome. So, I mean, people might know you on Instagram as @_wilderlife_. I believe your YouTube channel is just The Wilder Lifer. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know. If you just search for Wilder Life on the platforms, you'll find me. I think Wilder Life was already taken on YouTube, so I picked something as close as the next thing I could. Yeah.
It's funny. It's funny how we just make it work, right? It's like when I started becoming a bow hunter, there was a guy that had becoming a bow hunter as his Instagram page, but I'd already bought the website and started everything else. I was like, fuck, I can't not do it now. So I just put a podcast. So yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, man, your stuff is like you're pretty much an outdoorsman through and through to some extent. I would say that you're probably one of the people that I follow online that lives as close to self-sufficient as possible in regards to your food. And I don't know how much of that is true or not, and you can touch on that a bit more for us, I guess. But it's kind of just cool to see you're dabbling in a lot of everything that's the outdoor world. So yeah. Well, I forgot to put my phone on silent just as I was playing your guitar as well. So, yeah, there you go.
No, you're
right. Tell us about it. Is that kind of correct, would you say?
Yeah, well, the last, I suppose over the last 10 years, I've really taken my outdoors stuff to the next level and spending as much time outside as I can. And when I first started hunting, I was just into being in the bush and shooting stuff with my rifle. And the more I've progressed, I've gotten into killing less things and using more of the stuff. And within the last 12 months or so, my partner and I have bought a small property in the New England area, and we run a few sheep. We've had pigs before. We've got some chickens, and got lots of veggie patches. And it's just another way of keeping the outdoors sustainable, free-rangey kind of story going without having to be out hunting all the time, although we are hunting as much as we can.
Yeah. And so, like, on your block, do you have access to wild critters as well?
Yeah, it's only about 48 acres. We've still got a few bunnies running around, and Kira shot a fox that was in the chook pen a couple of months after we first moved here. But we're not particularly concerned about hunting a great deal on our place, although it is a lot of fun, and it's more just being able to have the space. And I've used a lot of our yard to use as the backdrop for videos I've made about bow hunting and stuff. And we've got some Murray Cod in the dams as well, so they're good fun to go down and chase when I feel like it. And yeah, just mainly just a lifestyle hobby kind of thing, really. But you don't need a great deal of space to have food for two people, so it's good.
Yeah, definitely. I think really it's a lifestyle that a lot of people envy, a lifestyle that a lot of people want. Like, I talk to a lot of people here in the city, and that's their dream. That's their goal, is to get themselves a little block just outside of the city, or even if it's a few hours drive, to have a small block to have some cattle and grow their own food and do that whole thing. I think it's really becoming more sought after with the busier life gets, the more connected we get through social media and everything else, yet people feel so disconnected. And I think that's just another way that people want to disconnect to reconnect.
Yeah, I agree, man. And I think we moved into this place in February this year, so it was within 2 months that everything with COVID hit. And but before that stage, I think we'd bought 3 pigs, and we'd put a few veggies in. And when everybody was starting to freak out and about the food supplies and whatever, we were actually cruising and perfectly fine. And but like I said, we wanted to do that sort of thing for a while. We haven't bought any cattle yet because as soon as we bought the place, the rains came and cattle prices went through the roof. But it's also a way that we can mix up our diet a fair bit, because as much as we love the wild game, and we've been pretty well living off wild game I certainly have for the last maybe 5 years, I still like to eat domestic pork. I'm half Lebanese, so I love my lamb. And it's also fun to mix it up with some of those domestic meats that have a bit more fat in them when we want to make mince and sausages as well. So it's all good fun to us.
Yeah, definitely, man. And with that, like, how about on the veggie front? Are you kind of veggie growers and stuff as well, or not really?
Yeah, I'm definitely a veggie eater. Kira knows everything about the gardening. I'm in the middle of trying to learn a lot more, but I'm at the stage of I just need her to say, just go and dig this hole and do this, and that's what I do.
Yeah.
But I've taken a little bit more of an interest with this latest season because I'm really into my chilies. So I've got a few chili plants going. At the moment, we've got a bunch of zucchinis going gangbusters. We've got, I don't know, garlic, silver beet, kale. We've had all that stuff. Tomatoes. I don't know, there's probably more, but I can't remember. We planted a couple of fruit trees.
Yeah.
I think a couple of apples and an apricot and a peach, and we're going to do a lot more of that soon as well.
That's awesome.
And then, the chooks, the eggs, and we've got some guinea fowl, eating some of their eggs.
Nice. They're quite small, right, the guinea fowl? The guinea fowl eggs?
Yeah, the eggs are much smaller. We mainly got them as pets to have around the place and try and stir up the foxes and the snakes and that, but they're just cool to have, and
they're also
we'll probably get some more of them in the future.
Aren't they really good for like ticks and like keeping the animals clean, essentially?
Maybe, yeah. Kira would probably know. I just think they look cool and they make cool noises.
Dude, they're the cool.
Like I said, we got the space, so
they're actually such an odd creature, right? Like you walk up to them, or anything that upsets them, they get off.
Yeah, and they. I mean, I think the term I've heard Kira say is they're they're still not really domesticated in the same kind of way that other birds that we might have domesticated are. Like, they're still fairly wild. We hand raised them, and I don't even think I could grab one if I wanted to now.
Yeah.
They don't really like us, but yeah, they're cool.
It's kind of, my auntie actually has some, and she literally had them in their cage for, I think, 3 months before she even let them out, and then she started letting them out. So now they know that it's home, and they only kind of wander off into their surrounding paddocks, essentially. But in the middle of the night, like just any night, they jump up in the highest tree, and they'll go as high as they can. And even if it's like windy as all buggery, they'll sit up there, and they'll just get blown around like all there. Like, it just goes crazy, and they just sit there and they go to sleep.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre.
Yeah, mate, we don't even lock our chickens away at the moment because we've got a pretty secure yard, and we did lose a couple of foxes here and there earlier in the year. But yeah, the guinea fowls do whatever they want.
Yeah.
It's sweet, and they're essentially free ranging, but they never go that far. Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah, it's odd. It's awesome. I really like them as a little character to have around the place. I think they're cool.
Yeah.
So how about the cod fishing? So do you always do that on your property? You had a fair bit of stuff that you like. I think you've been doing it for a few years, haven't you?
Yeah, mate. In terms of what's contributed to me as a person with all the outdoor stuff that I do, the cod fishing is where it started for me. I was only talking about it with my dad recently. He took me to a property that I'm still currently accessing to go fishing, and I caught my first cod there when I was about 3 years old. It was just down the road from where we used to live. It's a property owned by a bloke who, I believe he was the first private individual to breed Murray Cod and sell them to fishing clubs and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's where I do most of it. But in the area where I live, I've got access to Copeton Dam pretty close, and the Guada River as well, which I spend a bit of time on. And the stuff in my backyard, we bought our property right before the drought broke, and there were a couple of dams that still had water in them. And after we'd moved in, I just went for a bit of a walk around and noticed a few dead ones around the edge that once the rains came, I don't know whether it shocked them or whatever. So I haven't fished them that hard because I'm happy to leave them alone, and I'll put a few things in there to help them breed up over the next couple of years. But we've probably pulled 6 or 7 out of there over the few months that we've been living here, and they must have all come from the same population. All the ones we've caught have probably been around that 70 centimetre mark, so they're pretty solid fish. But, I've been chasing them for pretty well my whole life. And I was even saying to Kira in the car today that one of my favourite things about cod, and it's no disrespect to any of the other animals that I chase, but the cool thing with cod is they're true blue Aussie natives, and they're one of the few animals that consume, my mind and my spare time that is a native Australian animal. So I really like that.
So, I mean, I really don't know much about the cod at all. And apart from the fact that I've seen a lot of people fishing them right now because the season's just open, but I don't understand what the season is for them or anything. Can you kind of fill the listeners in a little bit more on that?
All I know about it's New South Wales, mate, and I believe the season's shut from the start of September to the 1st of December. Mm-hmm. And that's when they're getting ready for their breeding season. You can still fish for them in some places, including private dams. So my dad caught one here, I don't know, several weeks back, and it had a few scars on its face. It obviously been in some fights during the breeding season. But, yeah, it's just a close season in place to take the pressure off them when they're at their most vulnerable, because they typically guard their nests. And our fish don't have the big runs in the same way that some of the fish in the Northern Hemisphere do. So, yeah, they're especially cod. Like, the populations are really good in some areas, but they're pretty woeful in other areas. I think they're a little bit more vulnerable than people realise sometimes. But, one of my pet peeves is if cod are in a river that is noted for having trout in there, you can't fish that river for cod during trout closed season, which I understand, but it's a bit of a funny rule, I think. To sort of limit access to a native animal to protect an introduced one. But I've got time for trout, and I need to taste a few more of them too.
What is it all catch and release with the cod, the Murray Cod?
Mate, for me it is. I'm not I don't care if people want to eat them. I'm just actually not that into fish in general. Like I've eaten a lot of saltwater fish, and that's just phenomenal stuff. But haven't eaten many freshwater fish that I really enjoy. And the place where I do most of my cod fishing, again, it's a special place to me. And most of them, I catch it probably below the legal limit anyway. I mean, I may be wrong, so no one should quote me on this, but I think it's between 55 and 75 centimetres. That's how big they need to be for you to want to keep one. So plenty of the ones I catch are smaller than that, and one over 75 is an absolute whopper where I go.
Yeah.
But yeah, like if I was really into eating fish, I might keep the odd one here and there, but I'm not really into eating freshwater fish, so I'm happy to let them all go.
Yeah, okay. 60 centimetres is the minimum based on Google search.
Yeah, righto.
Actually, that might be just Queensland.
Yeah, it's somewhere around there. I mean, it's a pretty bloody big fish, really, like a 60 or 70 centimetre cod.
Man, I've seen some impressive stuff recently, like some of the ones that dudes are pulling out, and I think really a lot of the guys that I'm seeing do it doing catch and release. Like it's kind of I think they're mostly of the same thoughts.
Yeah, mate, and again, like I'm all about eating the stuff that I shoot and whatever, so I don't really look down my nose at people who want to eat a cod. I'm just not particularly interested in it. But go back a few decades and catch and release was it was not the norm.
Yeah.
And my dad, when he was a kid, remembers people going out on the Guada River and places like that around where we grew up, and they used to annihilate them, catch heaps, bring them all home, and the populations really suffered. So, and it's the same as anything, you know, it's got to be sustainable. You can't just kill everything, whether it's deer or, cod or whatever. So, yeah, I'm happy to let them all go. I enjoy catching them far too much. I like the photos. I like the country more than anything else, probably, where I chase them. Yeah.
And so, like, it seems like the go-to for something like the Murray Cod in particular is big and bright for lures if you're going to chase them that
lures?
way.
I places that get a lot of pressure, people probably think a lot more about their choice in lure than what I do. My dad and his cousin own a hard body lure company called Predatech Lures. So that's all I've ever used. I've caught plenty of fish on prototypes, so I don't stress too much about colours and that. But the most fun way for me to chase them is to use a lure that paddles on the surface, like a surface lure. Well, and that's why, because the hit's unreal.
Yeah. Have you ever fished barra before?
Yeah. Sort of, not really. I've had a few trips up north. I've hooked a couple and dropped them, but it's never been in that super prime time where they're just on.
Yeah. Is it a similar sort of hitting in regards to the way that barra hit compared to the cod?
From what I've seen, mate, fairly different. The barra tend to like a lure that maybe you can work a little bit fast, has a bit more of a tighter action. The barra, from what I've seen, jump out of the water a lot more and throw their head around, whereas cod, they don't sort of have that same kind of energy, I suppose, because they're not tropical, so they might be a bit more sluggish at different times. But I mean, I've only ever witnessed one decent barra being caught in my life, so I can't comment too much on it, but it's something I need to get up there and do at some point soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, it's I guess they're the biggest fish I've ever fished for is barra, and they're good fun. They same thing though. Like I definitely prefer using the surface lures where they hit it up high and you see them then jumping, but they jump a lot of the time anyway. But yeah, that was probably the most fun I've had fishing before. Definitely. So, I mean, for you, going back to the hunting side of things, you kind of play around with the trad bow a bit. How successful have you been with that?
Not really successful, mate. Like, I know we were joking before about how I'm definitely becoming a bow hunter myself, but like I had a mate very generously send me a recurve bow early last year. So that's what kicked me off in that direction, and would have been, November last year I got a billy goat, and January this year I got a billy goat, and I haven't killed anything else. I tried my best in the fallow rut, but one of the main reasons why I picked it up was just because I had that many critters around on my spots where I go, I just wanted to make it a bit more challenging, and I ended up shooting so much stuff on some of my spots with rifles in the drought that I thinned their numbers out, which is what I was intending on doing.
Yeah.
But it's made hunting with the trad bow for this year, since the drought's broken, much more difficult, which is fine. Like, I really don't mind. And to tell you the truth, I haven't been trying that hard since the rut. I've just been focusing on a few other things. So hopefully this summer I can get stuck into the critters.
So, I mean, this is probably a pretty interesting conversation for the drought side of things. How much have you seen the animals change apart from the numbers thinning?
Mate, yeah, towards the end of last year, even January this year, before all the rains came, the deer on one of my main spots they were getting really, really skinny. They were not well. I'd shot many dozens of them at that particular spot over the course of about 12 months. And the last couple I shot before the rains came were so skinny I didn't even eat them. And it felt really weird to leave them there like that, but they were just really ordinary. But the farmer's not an environmental terror by any means. That particular farmer really likes the deer, but they kept asking me to keep shooting them because they were feeding their cattle every day, obviously, and they were also trucking water to their property every day. So the deer were just putting unnecessary pressure on them.
Yep.
But pigs were ordinary too. I was getting lots of pictures of pigs on trail cameras. Interestingly enough, the boars were in incredible condition still. They'd been obviously eating a lot of carrion around the place, but some of the sows with suckers were really ordinary. But everything I've seen this year, including some of the deer I shot, would have been probably March. Yeah, super good, Nick, really fat. The country's bounced back well. Everything, all the animals are much more spread out, which is okay. I've just had to work a little bit harder for them, but it'll take a few years for the deer numbers to get back to where they were beforehand for me, I imagine. But the pigs, I think they're already bouncing back pretty quick in some places, which is good for me to see. But I think I'm going to have to start trapping them at some spots because it's hard to keep on top of them, especially when you spend a lot of time walking around with the recurve bow and you suck as much as I do. And that's why, I still rifle hunt plenty for that reason, because I've just got to do what I can to try and knock the numbers over.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if you're doing it for for a farmer. If that's the request of them, then obviously they're not going to let you play around too long.
Yeah, mate, and for me, it comes down to the rapport that I have with the people who own the property. Like, they know that they think I'm a little bit weird because I like to walk around in my camouflage and take photos and whatever, but they're perfectly happy for me to do that and enjoy myself as long as I'm seen to be doing what's in their best interests as well as mine. I'm lucky that I don't have any farmers who want me to just remove every single thing off their place for them. I've had that before when I used to live out west, and I was happy. Like, I've had farmers lend me quad bikes so I could be up in the pigs a lot more, which was really good fun. But since I've moved back to the New England area, things are a lot more cruisy. And as long as I'm making as much of a difference as I can, and they see me making an effort, then everybody's pretty happy. And if it means blasting stuff with a rifle every now and then, I do that. And I still love shooting with the rifles. And if I had to keep my freezer full of wild game with only my recurve bow, then I'd be a hungry man. So yeah,
it's so funny because that's literally what I got into hunting for. Was because I wanted to fill the freezer, and it took me two and a half years to get my first deer down. That was the first animal I kind of went after, but it's not the only food that I've got from the bow, luckily. But yeah, it's definitely, like, if you want to be successful and fill the freezer regularly, I think until you kind of get your head around it, then a rifle is probably the easier way to go. Yeah, mate, and it's obviously not just about how hard you work as well. Like, I'm very lucky with some of the spots I have access to, and obviously you've got some really good access up your way, but see, a lot of the Queensland buggers, they haven't got the public land. So it's really, you can have the best intentions and you can work as hard as humanly possible, but there are still some pretty significant roadblocks in your way, which is unfortunate. But it's just one of those things that everybody needs to appreciate what they've got and look after everything as best they can. And it's definitely a marathon. It's not a sprint. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely agree. So, I mean, mate, something that I've seen a lot of on your page is quite a lot of cooking of the food. Like you said, you've kind of been living off of wild game for the last 5 years. What is your favourite food to eat, like favourite game meat to eat?
Gee, last year venison was most of the wild game. Well, probably the last 4 or 5 years, like you were saying, yeah, mostly venison. I've eaten a couple of red deer, and I've eaten maybe a dozen or more sambar, and then many fallow. And yeah, I hear people say they like sambar the best. I've heard people say they like chiddle the best. For me, I enjoy sambar and fallow both equally. Mm-hmm. The cool thing about sambar is you can shoot a fairly young one, so it's nice and tender, but it's still significantly bigger than a fallow, which is nice. But I mean, a friend of mine shot a big, a friend of mine shot a really big pig the other day, and I made some schnitzel out of his back straps, which I was a little bit worried about, but it turned out fine.
Yep.
I gave a whole bunch of the rest of the meat off him to some boys at my gym, and they turned it into some Italian sausage mix. So I'm going to eat some of that.
So good.
Yeah, I don't really have a preference, mate. This year it's been more goats than anything else because they've been easier for me to find. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just whatever comes. We don't eat enough rabbits. I'd like to do that a bit more.
Yeah.
It's all good fun. Yeah.
And so when you go for the, like, actually, I want to ask you about your hanging fridge that you had set up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What did you do for that?
Mate, when I moved out of home, I took an old drinks fridge that mum and dad had. I took that with me, or maybe after another couple of years. But anyway, and I just used to keep that at the back of my old house, and every time I'd shoot something, I'd just leave it in there for a few days to set up, and then I'd butcher it. And it died early this year, so we got rid of that, and we've had a few other options pop up here and there. But that drink fridge, yeah, I suppose it's just like a commercial drink fridge that somebody would have in a cafe or something. It's just upright. Came up on Gumtree for $1,000. Yeah, so we just made the drive to the town where the bloke had it, and we bought it. And in terms of hanging it, all we did, I mean, I need to figure out something better probably, but I just stacked all of the racks that it came with on top of each other, so there was a bit more weight distribution. And then I just that sheep I had in there, I just put a bit of rope around the pelvis and then tied it up to those racks.
Yeah, because I
tied it with its legs.
One bit of rope, right?
Yeah, mate. I just if I tied it from the legs, it would have been touching the bottom of the fridge. So I tied it from the pelvis, and anything bigger than a sheep, I'll end up cutting it in half, or into the fore and the hind and the saddle. But that's the first time I used it, and I was stoked with it. So I think we might kill another sheep this weekend and put it in there as well. It's really, really worked well for us. And until we build a shed and put a cool room in it, then that's the best option we've got at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. No, it seems like it works perfect. And really, for most of the game that you're shooting, if you're going for fallow and for goats, it's perfect for them as well, right?
Yeah, mate. And even like I normally with a fallow, I'll just take the legs and off and put the back straps in a separate meat bag, so I can fit a lot more in there if I want to take the animal apart a little bit anyway. But yeah, it works super well. I'm stoked with it.
Yeah. And so what's your usual hang time for something? Like obviously sheep might be a little bit different, but how long are you usually hanging your meat for?
Whatever's convenient for me, to be honest, mate. I haven't got it down to a science as such. Like one of my friends, Matt Webb down in Victoria, he's got a bit of a rule of thumb that he does with aging his venison, whereas usually what it's worked out with for me is I've gone hunting or I've killed something on a weekend, so I put it in the fridge for a week, and then by the next weekend I've got the time to cut it up, so usually about a week. I don't like to leave stuff too much longer often because as much as it ages better, I don't like to waste as much on the outside of the meat with that rind you develop as much as it does protect the meat inside. So I've also put stuff in fridges with the skin on still, which keeps the meat a bit easier. But skinning stuff when it's gone cold is a bit of a pain in the butt too. So I don't really have a particular method I always gravitate to. It's just whatever we feel like doing at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's cool. It's something that I do want to get into. I've talked to a few different people about like wet and dry aging and trying it in different ways.
Yeah.
And it's something I'll plan to do eventually, but just, not yet. I'll get there. Had a mate.
Oh yeah, man, it's all good fun.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I started mincing the deer that I got just recently, and unfortunately, my mincer just completely killed out on me. So I've ended up having to order a new one. I'm still trying to get in touch with the guys that I bought it from, but the whole plan is to turn the back legs into some sausages. So I'll get there. I just haven't yet.
Yeah, man, and mincing. I think mincing's become a little bit. I think it's become underrated from what I noticed. Like people are quick to and make fun of people who turn all the shoulders or the shanks into mince because they're really good for slow cooking. And I love slow cooking my shoulders and my shanks as well. But at the moment, I would say we are mince poor. And I'm actually thinking about this next sheep I kill to keep the shoulders intact and the chops and the cutlets, and then mincing the back legs just to have more mince. And I know that might sound like sacrilege to some people, but mince is versatile. You know, it's you can do a whole lot of things with it. So I'm trying to up my mince game over the next couple of months, actually make some snags and rissoles and that sort of thing. So stuff that's quicker to cook. You don't need to think about it too much in advance.
It's very convenient. And I think also I like showing people wild game in meat patty style rather than it being a cut of meat. I think they tend to, the texture of it or something, I don't know what it is, but people tend to enjoy it quite a lot more. And it definitely changes the way that it cooks. Like obviously you're cutting the muscle from being long to short. And it just seems to be a bit of a different blend. I think it makes it probably more tender as well, so people can get their head around it a little bit more. But that's what I did with some red deer that I had previously, and it was awesome.
Yeah, man, and it's like I said, it's very convenient. Like I eat a lot of mince for breakfast, so it's nice to not have to think about coordinating some big slow cook. And you can do anything with it with the flavors. Like sometimes I'll put soy sauce and that kind of base in there. Sometimes it's a tomatoey, savory mince base. Obviously, bolognese is a staple, but like I say, it's absolutely a crowd pleaser. It's pretty easy to work with, and if you are used to eating slightly dry venison mince as well, which I am used to, then I don't actually add a lot of fat to my venison mince. A lot of the time, I just go straight up and it's fine. I'm happy to eat it like that too.
Yeah, when I've shared it with people, it's actually just been straight venison. It's always been that way rather than cutting any fat into it. And I think that's quite enjoyable, really.
Yeah, man, it's slightly different texture. Maybe you can taste things a bit better. Like I've added lamb fat and beef fat to venison before, which is great. It just makes it taste a little bit like lamb and beef, which is all good too. But pork fat tends to flavour a little bit less. But like I said, I don't really have a rule of thumb. We just do whatever we feel like at the time. It always turns out pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's why they tend to use pork fat more in sausages, because it has less of a flavour adjustment to it. I think that's why they kind of say, hey, you should try cut that in where possible. What do you kind of like? What is your go-to for some recipes for some of the venison stuff you're doing?
Mate, I suppose my absolute number one go-to would be steak Diane. It's been one of my favourite things to eat ever since I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And it was the first meal I cooked for my fiance. I've cooked it for a lot of people, and it's pretty like I'm not married to the idea of what a traditional Diane sauce needs to be. Usually I have a base of cream and Worcestershire sauce, but I'll put anything in there that I feel like. And that's a really good crowd pleaser. Yeah. Venison bolognese is a good one. A nice red wine casserole with nice big slow cooked bits of shank or shoulder I really like.
Have you rolled with the juniper berries in that one yet?
No, I haven't messed around too much with that stuff. I watch enough Jamie Oliver to have all his ideas burned into my brain, but I haven't done that yet. Even back legs and stuff, like typically what we'll do is we'll just separate them all into the different muscles, and we'll treat each muscle as a little roast and do a few of them when we have people around and slice them up really thin, and everybody loves it. It's unreal.
How about things like the silver side? Like what do you usually try to do for that?
Depends on how big the animal is, mate. On little fallow deer where they're always going to be tender. I've actually just cooked the whole silver side like one steak, and just made sure I've managed the heat where it's been a lot more of a medium heat, and I've just flipped it continuously so one side doesn't get too burnt. That's been unreal. I trim off all the really chewy stuff, obviously, and that usually just becomes dog food. I've done silver side roasts before where we just keep it fairly rare in the middle and slice it across the grain. Goes good. It's a good one to make jerky out of as well, but I haven't made any jerky this year. I don't really think too much else. Yeah, usually just small roasts or treat it like a steak.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I think, I'd already made the decision when I got this last year that I was going to turn like a lot of the back legs into sausages. And the plan was I was going to do a lot of sausage and then share it around with the family at Christmas. But because we're getting pretty close to Christmas and I still don't have a mincer right now, like I've got a weekend or two left to kind of get in there and do it. So, it's either going to be a really busy few weeks beforehand or it just won't happen. But, so because I've kind of actually I got the back legs off, and it was a big day. By the time I'd kind of butchered her, I had to quarter her in Gympie. I had to drive her back, and traffic was horrible like it is every Sunday. And then I ended up being up late that night and had to be up at 4 a.m. the next day. So it was kind of just like one of those days where you're fighting to try and get stuff done. And so I ended up just literally cubing her back legs up, thinking I was going to be mincing it all. And so right now it's literally in cubed bags of meat. And I'm like, it's either they're going to be minced or they'll be turned into slow cook if the mincer doesn't come through.
Yeah. It
all works.
We've all been there where the time is of the essence and you're rushing to get things done. But it'll work out good, man. Like, I don't mind the I've had venison sausages before that I've dried out because I haven't had too much fat in them, but still, like it's a good way to use stuff without having to think too much about it. If you just want a whole lot of stuff on the go, then a lot of those muscles in the back leg, they're lean enough where you could just mince them all up, add a bit of fat, and you've got a heap of good stuff there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was kind of planning to make some fig and onion, I think. Fig and onion ones, and then I was planning on doing an apple and cranberry one. So I had it all prepped and I was ready to roll, and then just all fell apart on me, but that's all right. It will come together.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us, what are kind of your, I guess, endeavors, or what do you see happening in the next kind of few years for you with the hunting side of things? Are you planning to really go after the recurve side of things?
Yeah, mate. I right now all I'm thinking about is a fallow rut for next year.
Yeah,
I got my ass kicked enough with the way I went about it this year that I've got a bit of a different plan if things are similar next year, and I believe they will be because it's probably going to be a wet summer and there's going to be just as much feed around. I wouldn't mind getting over to New Zealand with Kira, taking a rifle and just trying to roll a few things over there. I wouldn't mind doing a few more trips down south to chase sambar, but I'll take a rifle down there again. I went down there this year and did a backpack trip, and that was right when COVID ramped up in Victoria again. So that's tough to plan to going down there a second time this year. But most of what I look forward to for me is more seeing different country and being able to just spend time with people I care about, and if I can do it while I'm hunting, then that's all good. So I don't have many really big goals over the next couple of years for me besides trying to just kill more stuff with the recurve bow and become deadly with that, and maybe work up towards getting a scrub bull or a buffalo with it. But
yeah, that's awesome.
That's probably a fair way off. Yeah.
So let's talk about the rut that you've just gone through. What went well, what went wrong, and what are you going to change coming into the next year?
Yeah, well, I've been spoiled with how good the rut's been for me the couple of years leading up to this one. So I didn't really think I'd be able to hunt it the same way with a rifle, but I figured there'd be enough noise and there'd be enough deer out in the open that I could find a group and maybe select a buck and then make a bit of a plan from there, maybe follow them into some of the thicker stuff or watch where they might go to bed and then plan to be there when they come out in the afternoon or be there again the next morning. That was what I had planned. Even last year, to make my life a bit more difficult, I took my 30-30 with iron sights because I wasn't good enough with my recurve bow yet, and I'd blown up my compound bow. So I thought, right, I'll do some close stuff. And the second best buck I shot last year, I observed him in an open paddock. I just sat there with my dad. We watched him for probably about half an hour. It's really good. And he went into some thick pine and was still croaking his head off. So I came around from a different direction. I got the wind really good, and I got close enough to him in the pines. I couldn't see him. I could hear him, but I figured he would be less than 100 meters away. And I just let out a few rattles, and he just came tearing in. And I leveled him from probably about 20 meters. It was great. So I figured this year would be the same, but because the deer was so much more spread out, it wasn't. I couldn't make much of a plan until they were on top of me. So that's what my downfall was. Every deer that I had run into me, it was a blind rattle. Essentially, I could hear roughly where they were. I'd find a pretty good spot. I'd rattle, and that was the problem too. I was trying to film and rattle and shoot the bow all at the same time. So next year, I've probably got a couple of blokes who can come with me and do some rattling, and I'll set off to a slightly different side to a different direction where the rattle's coming from, and hopefully intercept them. I'll probably do a little bit more scouting and have some more cameras up to see where the deer might be hanging around when the rut starts. And besides that, I just hope to be a better shot. So in the couple of very quick moments where I might get presented with a shot, I'm a lot more confident letting one go. So it's less about making sure they're inside 15 yards, and hopefully I'll be confident out to about 25 or so, which it's still not a very long way, but it's nearly twice what my confident range was during the rut this time. So they're the things I'm going to be focusing on. Plus, just I don't know, staying out there a little bit longer, or trying to not get so frustrated with the way things went, which is what happened to me this year. I just got mentally beat up because it didn't work out the way I knew it'd be tough with the bow, but if it was tough with the bow, but I was still seeing a heap of deer, then I'd be able to maybe keep coming up with a new plan. But it just was so hard for me to find them. It just wrecked me a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, really, like the things you talked about, especially taking someone with you and having them rattle just off to the side. Oh my God. Got something stuck in my throat. Yeah, having someone just rattle off to the side, like that makes a big difference. I was calling in some stuff, and like this year on the red rut, or the raw, and they come straight at you, and if you're not prepared and ready for it, like if you're just not in the right position, it just messes you up. So if they're kind of distracted and looking over to the side of you, obviously that makes a big difference. But also with the filming side of things, I can imagine that would take a lot of pressure off of you if you've got someone else kind of doing that side for you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like really, I got so beat up, but I still had the best time. Some of that footage that I got was really good. So I'm not disappointed. I'm perfectly happy to be in the situation where I got my ass kicked and I've got to go back to the drawing board because I've had it so good the last couple of years. It's nice to mix things up a little bit, you know. But I still might take my 30-30 out and shoot one or two with that to ease myself into it. I don't know yet. I'll see how I'm feeling because I'm actually getting married in the middle of the rut next year. Yeah. Well, that sounds it sounds inconvenient, but Kira and I planned it that way. So I'm going to hunt the week leading up to the wedding, and then after the wedding, we're going to go hunting as part of our honeymoon. So it's awesome. Going to be pretty good.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's good that each year you can almost plan that in as part of the anniversary as well if she's into hunting.
Yeah, it'll be hard to forget.
Yeah, hopefully you get a buck of a lifetime this year too. Then it'd be a mix of it all.
That'd be cool.
No, that's cool, man. Yeah. I think realistically, like for the rut, I got told this so many times, but it's just about giving yourself as much time as possible. Like obviously knowing where is exactly what you've said in preparation, getting the cameras out more, knowing where the deer are hanging out, being there and giving it as much time as you can, and then really just sitting off and watching for as long as you can, finding the ones you want to, and depending on which one you're going for, like make your plan, whether you're going to rattle, whether you're going to sneak in close. Something that Nick Morton was telling me to do based on the Reds this year round. He was like, man, what you want to actually do is intercept where the females are going, because the males are going to chase their scent. And he was like, for you, like in particular, he's like, find where the big boys are, find the girls they're hanging out with, and as soon as a girl shoots off to one angle, like if you can get between where she is and where he is, and he's going to walk directly in that path, and then that's when you can take your best shots. Unfortunately, I didn't have another trip planned since that. A bit of advice, but it's definitely something I'm going to stick with for next year when it comes to the rut. That's for sure.
Yeah, man, and again, like you're saying, it's so much of what I've done the couple of years leading up to this one is just obviously there's been enough croaking going on. I can hear the bucks, but I've always just gone to the spots where in the months leading up to the rut, I've seen all the does, and it's been fine because the bucks just turn up where the does are. Whereas, and that was again the way I was looking at this year. But I remember going out to the property, the hunting club I'm a part of up here. They were organising a taxidermy caping workshop or whatever it was, and it was like, yeah, Dylan, you can go and shoot us a buck for that workshop, can't you? I said, yeah, man, no worries. I'd been shooting them all year and all summer, and I went out after all the rains had come, and I just remember getting out of my car thinking this might be tough here, and I didn't get anything. I shot a little pig for us to use as the trophy thing, but I couldn't find the does. Yeah. So from that moment, I was like, this might be hard. I might have a hard time in this rut. And yeah, I couldn't even all the groups of does I'd come across had actually run into on accident, I suppose, in the thick stuff. So yeah, that I need to, if there's still as much feed around as what there has been all year this year, I'll need to be figuring out where the does are hanging out. I think I've got a pretty good idea, but that's what I'll have to focus on and just sort of hang around there like a bloody assassin in the shadows and just hope something walks past me.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating. I mean, I've gone to another property, a paid property up in northern New South Wales, Red Hill there. And after going there a few times, like the goats was kind of what I was chasing the whole time. But last time we had a pretty good stalk on some fallow. And really, it's kind of made me, like after going there twice, I'm starting to get a fair grasp on the lay of the land, and really I've always seen the fallow in the same place, and the goats kind of roam everywhere, right? They're free soldiers. They just go and do their thing, whereas deer are typically like, and it's what I've found really with the reds, they're just very habitual. They do their thing and they continue to do it. And for me to go a year and a half later and still find them in the exact same place for those fallow, like it kind of speaks volumes.
Yeah, mate, and I think I've heard a few people say on different podcasts over the last couple of years that that's one of the things that it makes, well, fallow in particular, easier to predict, and it's one of the things that makes sambar so much fun to hunt because sambar are quite happy to stay in the thick stuff and not really come out when they're in that high country. Whereas, all the places that I hunt fallow, it's obviously just entirely ruled by their gut. They're perfectly happy to be out in the stuff where you would believe you would want to see them because it's out in the open. Even one block I hunt, the whole block is pretty much scrub, but it's on one of its boundaries is a really, really big station with a lot of improved pasture, and it's just like clockwork. They're out there feeding every night, and they're in the scrub every day. It's much easier to predict. Yeah. I went there in the rut too, but I still got smashed.
It's unfortunate. So let's dive into your backpack hunts a little bit. Like, is there anything like as a first point? Is there any big lessons that you learned? Things that you would definitely change come next time?
Look, mate. I've spent a lot of time with a heavy bag on my back, even though I haven't done much in the way of backpack hunting because. Last year, over September, October, I walked the Dakota track with my brothers. So all last year in the lead up for that, I just had a heap of junk in my bag I didn't need when I was hunting just to make it heavier. Mm-hmm. And Dakota taught me plenty about backpacking as well, but the weather was easy to deal with. So where I'm going with this is that the backpack hunt I did in Victoria this year went really smoothly. I wasn't really surprised by anything. Like, it was all pretty well what I expected, but the biggest takeaway I have from that is in the middle of winter, I took a heap more clothes than I needed. Yeah. And so my bag was at pretty well 100% capacity, but it was just from bulky jumpers and stuff. And I just didn't need quite that many. And I like to joke with people. The other thing I did was I took a bottle of rum in, which was like one of the best things ever. But I took it in the glass bottle that it came in. So once we'd finished drinking it, it still took up just as much space in my bag. And I haven't got a small bag either, mate. Like I've got it's an EXO 5500, so I've got plenty of real estate in there. And yeah, it was bursting at the seams. So I need to compress a little bit of my clothing options.
Take a goon bag next time instead.
That's exactly right, mate. Yeah.
Maybe not as good a drop, but hey, at least you got a pillow.
Oh man, it was like, I was thinking I've got one of those Sawyer bags that you screw the filters onto. Just fill one of them up with the rum or something. But,
yeah, definitely.
And look, I was the only one in camp who didn't have a Helinox or a BCF equivalent of a Helinox camp chair, and I thought I wouldn't need it, and I would have really liked one.
But if you didn't like,
besides that,
I was going to say, if you didn't have them kind of sharing or showing that off to you, do you think you'd still want it?
I don't know. I ended up just taking because the ground was always wet. We camped on a river, so it was pretty damp, and I just took my one of my gaiters off and laid it on the ground and sat on that the whole time. But yeah, in terms of the hunting itself, like I'd never really hunted that way before. It's very thick country, so as much I was preparing for pretty long shots with my rifle, but most of what was going to happen would have been inside 200 yards. But yeah, in terms of the gear and the prep and all that, I was pretty pleased with how it all went. I had too many options for water as well. I had a stereo pen, I had some tablets, and I maybe had a filter. So I'd probably just cut that back a little bit. And
which was
especially
your
if I know
favorite?
the water's going to be fine. I really like the idea of the stereo pen now because where I do a lot of my fishing, it's so hot in summer, I'll carry maybe 4 or 5 litres of water with me. And if the river's running pretty clean, my plan now is to hike in maybe with 2 and then sterilise a litre every time I need it as I'm going, and then maybe sterilise 2 litres for the walk out. So it's just a bit less weight to carry in general.
Yeah.
The tablets worked okay. I wasn't that worried about the flavour of the chlorine kind of stuff. When we were in Kokoda, we were worried about the quality of the water, so we were actually hiking around with a packet of that Gatorade powder that we were putting in our water, so that might be something to look at too. But again, it's just extra stuff to take. It's nice to have, but I don't really care that bad.
With the stereo pen, like what's the deal with them? You put them in, and how long does it take to actually work?
Maybe I think it's maybe like a minute or 2
per litre,
depending on how big. Yeah, I think you press the button once for a half litre and twice for 1 litre, and it does. It's pretty cool little invention, really. I'm stoked with. Like I've sort of been using one for the last 12 months in some way or another. Really good bit of gear. Doesn't take up too much room. Reasonably reliable.
And do they have like a certain amount of uses?
I don't know, mate. I think it's like if you use the lithium batteries, it might be several thousand sterilizations out of them, or maybe it's not quite that much. But like a lot, it's not like I mean, we were sterilizing water with those pens several times a day on the Kokoda track, and the batteries that we had inside them had been left over from the previous group, and I think it took them even most of the way through the trip before they ran out and we had to change them. So, like that, pretty good bit of gear.
Mm. And how clear do you want the water to be? Like with something like that, obviously it's not going to get rid of all the muck, but how clear are you looking for?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, man. Where the river where I've been cod fishing lately, even though the drought's broken, that river needs a really good flush out. So, if I had to drink that water, if I was going to die, I'd drink it, stereo pen or not, but it's pretty mucky. And so the stereo pen does nothing for any solids in there. It won't change the color of it. It'll just make it safe and sterilizes or neutralizes any of the things in there that might make you sick, but it's still going to taste like crap if it looks like crap.
Yeah, I think that's part of the joy of it all, right? Like what taste you're going to get with it.
Yeah.
No, I think that'd be the cool thing about going to New Zealand. Like the glacier water you'd be getting off there would be just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, man, that's the thing. Like where we were in Victoria, the water was unreal. Like we probably could have drank it without sterilising it. Really, it was super, super clean. So yeah, it made a big difference. And we were hunting river systems most of the time. So I had like a Cedar Summit pack tap back at camp. I had a 3-litre Camelback. I ended up leaving that back at camp, and I just walk around with 2 Nalgene's, sterilise as I went. It's fine.
Yeah. And so, what was your kind of game plan? Like, obviously, if you're hunting the rivers, are you just kind of walking along, popping along, seeing what's about, or are you guys glassing it first, watching for them to come in, pull the water, and then going down for them?
Yeah, well, it wasn't a high country hunt. Like I think we were somewhere between 500 and 600 meters above sea level. Like so, it wasn't some big thing where we had the tops and we could glass a lot, but still. There were 2 of us with rifles and 2 of us with bows. So we still liked the idea of trying to find a spot to glass and get eyes on something and then make a bit of a plan. Didn't quite work out that way. One bloke did shoot a couple with his rifle, which was good. One day I was in an area that looked like the tops kind of area with some of those snow gums and that, like fairly flat, fairly open. And as soon as we were walking around there, we knew it looked pretty good. There was a lot of sign, and we bumped into a really big stag. He would have only been about 50 yards away, but it was so quick, we just didn't get a shot at him at all. So it would have been nice to see him well before he saw us. But if I were to go to the same spot again, I'd probably spend more time sitting and watching, which I have a really hard time doing. Because there was that many deer in the system, it's just you're probably a better chance of having something walk in front of you if you've got a reasonable amount of view than if you're walking around making a bunch of racket.
Yeah.
But like I said before, like I was just happy to be down there with some blokes who were good sambar hunters and see some different countries. So I had just as much fun hunting as I did taking photos and just enjoying the country and looking at some different sorts of trees and being in the presence of wild dogs and that sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely, dude. So, like with the ones you guys got down, because sambar are huge, right? Were they big ones as well?
Yeah. The hind, I don't know, maybe wasn't super big. I didn't see her I didn't see either of them in the flesh really. Yeah, the stag is pretty big. I think he might have been 24 inches, something like that.
Yeah.
And they are big. I've cut up a few. They're significantly bigger than a fallow, much more difficult to handle. But again, yeah, heaps of meat. And the boys gave me some of that meat to bring back up to New South Wales with me, and we had it over a couple of meals. And yeah, geez, it was good. Really good stuff. Really healthy animals.
Was it just literally like you just butchered it on the spot, pretty much, from where they fell?
What happened was with the hind, the boys went out. Actually, I went up that particular gully with Matt the first morning, and we saw an area when we were coming back in the afternoon that was like, look, this is the kind of spot you could sit in the morning and you would probably see them. Mm-hmm. So we just told the other boys, like, just go up here, have a sit, and want to walk out. And it did. They shot it. And I think they ended up, between the 2 of them, they packed front and back legs and back straps back to camp in one go between them, but camp wasn't that far. And then what we ended up doing was hanging that in game bags really close to the river. So, down where all the cold air settles. And we left it there for, from pretty well, the second day of the hunt until we walked out, because we ended up moving camp further upriver and we collected that deer on the way back. So when we came back through, the legs were really cold. We skinned them and separated all the muscles on the ground, and then we just loaded our bags up and walked out.
Yeah, that's unreal. It's crazy how much weight you can drop just by getting rid of the bones too, right?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, I had never done that with any of the fallow. Obviously I've never taken the spine or whatever, but yeah, all the deer that I've packed out of the mountains in my spots, the leg bones have all been intact. Mm-hmm. Even all the goats I've done lately, I've left all the bones in there. I think, and it's one of those trade-offs, like you're saying, that it does save the weight. I like wherever possible to keep the meat in as bigger pieces, so there's less surface area to get muck on, and there's less chance of like the muscle pulling back into itself with rigor mortis and that. So, yeah, I will normally leave the bones in, but I've never had to pack an animal out in that kind of situation before, where there was we had a heap of gear, so our bags were still fairly heavy. It was raining. It was hard country to walk through, very, very uneven ground, so it's very slow going. So, yeah, we broke it down as much as we could.
Man, I'm just looking at some of the weights of different deer. So fallow, anywhere between 46 to an 80 kgs on a male, and obviously the 80 kgs would be your big boys. When we're looking at red deer and sambar deer, they're anywhere up to 200 kilos. So it's obvious, like up to 4 times the amount is absolutely insane with the weight difference. So obviously you do need to take a little bit of a different precaution with it. And I think really the goats are going to be even smaller than your fallow, right? Let's have a...
Mate, I would say on average, some of the billy goats I've shot have been damn near the same size as some of the fallow bucks I've shot. They're typically a little bit shorter, but I'd say almost just as heavy. One of my favourite numbers to quote, because I don't weigh much, so I don't have much in the way of like anecdotes to tell people. But a friend of mine who used to live down in southern New South Wales, he shot plenty of sambar in his time, and he shot one spiker that he hung up in a cool room for us to butcher, and with the head off and then the feet off and the guts out, that spiker still weighed 110 kilos.
Jesus.
So, yeah, and that was with the skin on still. So it's reasonable to believe that thing would have been at least 150 kilo animal, maybe bigger. So, yeah, because if you dress out a lamb, I know the skin's off, but most sort of standard size lambs dress out around that 22, 25 kilo mark. But on the hoof, they're probably somewhere over that 35, 40 kilo mark. So, yeah. And like I said, he was a spiker. So they're significantly bigger.
It's insane. Imagine on a good season as well, right, where they've got feed all year round or whatever, just before the rut when they're like in pristine condition.
Oh, yeah. But having said that, all the sambar I've eaten have been in really good nick. They just, someone might be able to prove me wrong. Like, I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I haven't really seen sambar covered in fat like what I have with fallow. I don't know whether it's just the way their bodies are or whatever, but yeah, I've seen some fallow that just, without a word of a lie, like an inch of fat from the back of their neck all the way down to their rump. They were bucks in early March that had been eating a lot of blackberries and they hadn't burned up their calories over the rut. But I've never seen sambar look like that. I'm sure they could in some really good areas. I've just never experienced it.
With those fallow, like, have you ever eaten the tallow as such? Have you tried that? You always get rid of it?
I sometimes when I'm a little bit careless with the way I trim, I'm not scared of it. I just haven't gotten around to it. But something that Kira wants to do is, if we get a couple of really fatty bucks next autumn, is to maybe render the fat down and do stuff with it. Like we killed a couple of big wethers for a farmer a couple of months ago, and they were just huge. Like, they were difficult to process. They were that big, like significantly bigger than what a lamb should be. And but we ended up with, I think it would be 10 litres worth of rendered pure white sheep fat out of them.
Wow.
And that's with leaving enough on the chops and stuff too. Like, that's just stuff we just cut off because it was a waste of time leaving it on the feed. So, and she made soap out of that a couple of weeks ago, and she really wants to do it with some deer. So that's something else we might try.
That's unreal. I was going to say, I don't know what you're going to do with 10 kilos it's worth. Like, that's crazy.
Oh man, yeah. Just pure white. It's like we got a couple of big ice cream containers of just perfect. Like ice cream.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
Have you used the soap?
But with the deer, no, I think I don't know. I think it still has to age a bit or something. I don't know much about it. I think it's in the stages where it's still pretty harsh and it's maybe harmful. I don't know. I should get her in here so she could tell me what the facts are.
I had a mate that became obsessed with trying to make soap. He wanted to make his own soap company purely based on the fact of Fight Club and being more like Tyler Durden. It was just it was like, you know what, I want to be more like Tyler Durden. So he started brewing soap in his bathtub.
Yeah, righto. Yeah, well, again, it's just another piece of the it's a way of keeping the wild game story happening.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, if there's a weekend that you can't get out hunting or you're tired, I mean, that's what happens with me. Like, I might hunt really hard one weekend and then I'll get smashed at work and be back there late a few nights, and then the next weekend I might be really tired. So rather than bust my guts again to get out hunting, I might say, right, I'm going to make some mince, or we're going to make some soap, or we're going to do something in the garden. So it's just, a way to always be involved, I suppose. And the soap thing's cool for gifts too. I think that's what we're going to do with some of it. Give it to some people over Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's anything that you put a lot of effort into. I think people really appreciate that, especially as you get older. Like my dad always does hand gifts, like handmade gifts. I think that's just the best. And as I start to get more into, like actually last year I made some goat and venison sausages, and that's what I gave a lot of my clients for Christmas, and they were all stoked on that. They thought it was awesome.
Oh man, yeah, that'd be sweet as.
Yeah, I think it's just like doing that thing that takes a lot of effort, and you put a lot of love and effort into it. Like they understand that then, and they appreciate it a lot more.
Yeah, man, and then I know it's like it's a cliche or something that a lot of us are talking about right now with like the blood origins thing starting up and that, but those kind of things as well. If there's ever going to be moments where non-hunters start to really appreciate what hunting is, it's those kinds of moments, you know, where you've done something, you made a lot of effort, you've gone out of your way to try and educate somebody and do something nice for them. Like, it's hard to imagine that going south, you know, like that would always end well, I can imagine.
Yeah, definitely. Just finding the right people to do it with. You can't just go up to a vegan and say, "Here, have some soap."
Yeah, well, yeah, we've got a couple of vegan friends. They're legends, eh? And like they use us as sounding boards a lot. When, like, if they've got a question, rather than ask it on Facebook and get hammered, like, they'll be like, "Look, you know, we trust you guys, so what do you think about this?" And they don't get howled down, and they've always been really positive conversations.
A lot of the vegans
I'll have some of them eaten.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of the vegans I've talked to or that I know, their perspective on it is that they just can't do hunting. Like, that would be the way that they would go about it, because they think that that's the most ethical way to do it, but they themselves can't do that or bring themselves to it, so therefore they are not meat eaters, because they don't believe if they can't do it that they should be able to indulge in that thing. And I respect that completely. I think that's completely fine. But then they also, because of that being their choice, they do not hate on you for not eating or for eating meat when you've gone and hunted it and done that proper process.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man, and I respect that too. Like, I've got a bigger problem with somebody who wants to have a go at me for eating a deer if they're not a veggie and they're perfectly happy to buy their meat from the shops. And it doesn't happen to me often, I have to say. Most people that I associate with get what I'm about pretty quickly. Even like that mate that I'd been fishing with last weekend. He's not big on eating meat, but he's super big on the environment. So he's all about hunting and removing feral animals where they need to be removed and all that sort of stuff. And he wants to come out hunting with me and take photos and whatever. It's just not something he's really that interested in doing. And I'm like, yeah, man, you know, he's a cool dude, loves his fishing. He's just as passionate about the outdoors as what I am. So we're really good mates, even though we come at our appreciation for the outdoors from two really different places.
Yeah, definitely. I think really, like, I think that's what is, as you get into it more and more, that's what you want to share with people, the experience of just being out in the wild and being in the bush. And like the amount of awesome things I've witnessed since spending more time in the bush is like, it's every time you go out, you just see something newer and cooler, and you're just like, wow, that's so different. Like something you'd never see if you're sitting at home, obviously. So it's like, you want to share that experience with people. Yeah,
man. I'm the same. I've invited plenty of people who aren't really keen hunters to come out and do some stuff with me just to see the places that I get to be. And even on Saturday while we were fishing, we heard some ducks in flight sort of, I guess, changed direction in the air really quickly. We heard like the wind coming off their wings, and we both looked up and we saw this peregrine falcon like chasing these ducks through the gorge. And we're both obsessed with peregrine falcons. Like, I mean, obsessed. Yeah. So of all the cool things that happened to us that day, like we saw some pigs, we saw some goats, we caught a few fish, but that falcon chasing those ducks was the coolest thing that happened to us that day. It was just unreal.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool. And that's the sort of stuff, right? Like, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Those things that you see and you witness and you're like, wow, I want to share that with someone else.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, no, and I think that's where filming obviously is becoming such a big play for people. And obviously we show a lot of the hunting side of things because that's what a lot of hunters want to see as well, is the actual hunt going down. But I'm definitely noticing some of the guys that are doing the best work with the cameras are showing a lot of the other animals and bits and pieces like of the wilderness that they're going out into rather than it just being about the hunt.
Yeah, man. And like I've always been into the camera thing. My dad has too. My dad inspired me in that regard. Like he made videos of us fishing together when I was really little, like that cottage I caught when I was 3. He made a video production out of that with old school cassette kind of gear, you know. And all he did it for was just to be able to share it with members of our family and whatever, and that's really cool. So as much as I love I mean, I like sharing the stuff with people if they're interested in seeing it, but my main motivation for taking as many photos and videos as what I do is purely just because I enjoy doing it, and that's it. And I like sharing it with people, but it's not really anything to do with self-promotion or whatever. Like if I become famous or whatever, yeah, cool, but I'm not out to do that. Like, I enjoy my job very much. I enjoy the way I've managed to sort of set my life up to be the way it is right now. And I have a lot of spare time to do the things I like to do. And if I get to record it and have the photos in my house or come home and show Kira some of the video or show my friends some of the video, I really like doing that. And if it inspires other people to do the same thing, that's cool too. I mean, one of my main motivations is so I can send videos to my mates over Facebook when I get back from a hunt to say, look what you missed out on, you know, and we all do that to each other. Yeah, it's really good.
No, that's unreal, man. I think that's what's kept this podcast going, to be honest. The fact that people have got behind it and they still get behind it all the time and say, you know what, the amount of help that this has given me is incredible. So thank you for doing what you do. And that's really my motivator to keep going with it. Yeah,
man, absolutely. And like, it's a real niche thing, but it's like there aren't that many bow hunters in the world.
No,
but with all the social media stuff that there is out there, like there's always more and more stuff coming up. It's good information. It's good community. Like, I've connected with so many people online as a result of podcasts, and like, I haven't had any formal lessons or anything about shooting a recurve bow. It's just been talking to people on the net. I mean, some of them you've even had on your podcast, you know, like Jack Spinks and those kind of blokes. Like, so in terms of me and my recurve bow journey, like, I wouldn't have even been sent this recurve bow if I hadn't been talking to people on the internet about it. So it's good the way everything's worked out, and hopefully things will keep moving in a positive direction with all that.
Yeah, definitely, dude. No, that's sick. It's definitely something I want to get back to one day. We'll be going out and hunting with the recurve. I've taken a rabbit with one, and that's it. And that it's kind of like, hey, I will get back to it. But for right now, I'm all about the wheels. I'm loving the compound.
Oh yeah, man. And like I'm just not as interested in the compound, but I've got no disrespect towards it. Like, I've killed some stuff with the compound. I loved it. And when I was down in Victoria, Matt had his compound with him, and he's known for being he's known for being a trad bloke, but he just happened to be wanting to hang off the back of his compound. I was like, cool, man. And he was the first person I've ever seen in the flesh drop arrows into a target at 80 yards and be able to call his shots and say, oh, that one's a bit right, that one's a bit left. And once they've landed, he's called it properly, you know. So I'm like, man, maybe I'll get one day, you know. But for me, I'm just scared of I'm just scared of them. Like I said, I accidentally dry fired one I had, blew it up, and I'm just not. I don't know. I can work on a recurve bow myself very easily, whereas with a compound, I don't want to have to
be
bust the
reliant.
learning curve of it's mainly just being lazy. It's being lazy because I think they're complicated, even though hunting with a recurve bows, I've got to be closer. So, it's all just a complicated mess of like the way I feel about stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I've got Shane Chater from Bowhunters Domain. He lives probably 40 minutes away from me. So if I ever have anything,
sweet.
and I actually got my new bow, I got that from him. So really, it's like if anything ever goes wrong, I'm like, Shane, what do I do? I'm like, mate, I'm coming over, fix me up, and he does it all for me. So yeah, it's helpful in that regard.
Yeah, he's a cool dude, man.
He is. He's really nice.
I called him up at the start of this year because I couldn't find any arrows like in the spine I needed for my recurve, and I said, look, man, have you got any 400s? And he said, no, I've only got 350s. And I said, full length 350s with a heap of weight up front might be able to tune out with my recurve. And he just sent me a couple to see if they'd work for me. I was like, man, you bloody legend. And then I ordered some since because they did work, thankfully.
Yeah.
Just nice dude, man.
No,
someone else who's just keen to help people out who need a bit of advice or whatever. It's really good.
Man, just recently he actually he gave away, like, I think it was something like 6 dozen arrows to people who are up and coming in the sport that didn't have money. He was like, he just put it up online and said, hey, is there anyone that you know of in bow hunting that's trying to get into bow hunting or archery in general that don't have arrows, that need arrows right now and they can't afford them? And he just gave them out. I'm like, dude, you're a legend. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah, man. That is cool. Yeah. No, I've like I said, I've connected with a heap of people online since starting the bow stuff. Some are really good mates of mine now, actually, or even some people like they were good mates already, but we started the recurve bow thing at around the same time, so they've connected better. Heap of good people out there for sure, and it's I don't know, it's just fun, man, making new friends and talking about hunting and
I think
all that good stuff.
It attracts a certain type of person as well, right? Which I think is awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Especially the trad stuff. Like there's like the trad police with the plaid and the real old school, which I like too. Like I like my old school wool clothes and that. But like, I mean, there's a million podcasts out now talking about how there's a bunch of new school blokes coming into trad because it's starting to get cool again, and it's. I mean, it seems like every week on Instagram, somebody who I follow and have a huge amount of respect for is just picking up a compound or a recurve just for the sake of trying something a little bit different. And the Australian hunting community is so tiny. Like everybody knows everybody over Instagram in a way, man.
Yeah, definitely.
And just people popping up and just trying the bow thing. It's just sweet, really cool.
Dude, I went to the archery shop not so long ago and was blown away with how empty it was. Like, obviously, with COVID, it's been hard for them to get stock in. But the guy at the counter was like, man, we can't keep up. Like, every time we get new shipments in, there's just people left, right, and center coming in and buying bows that they've never seen before or anything. COVID came about and they wanted to start getting into hunting. So, yeah, they've just had, like, the shop was bare. It was crazy.
Yeah, mad. I experienced a similar thing today in a home brew shop.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Can't keep up. Yeah, bloody everyone's at home. They're bored, so they're starting to brew some bloody beer and mead and whatever. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Crazy.
Alrighty, dude. Well, I think that's probably a pretty good place to leave it. So once again, your Instagram handle is @_wilderlife_. I think that's probably the best place to kind of get in touch with you and start to follow along. You've got links to your YouTube channel and everything there and some of the cool things that you've been up to. So, outside of that, man, I think probably a good thing to touch on or finish on that I haven't really been doing enough of recently in the more recent podcast, but let's give a tip for a new bow hunter getting in or new person getting into traditional hunting. What's something that you think could be a worthwhile or a worthy tip for them?
Rightio. Well, look, funnily enough, I have a video on my YouTube it's called Trad Tips for Newbies. And
awesome.
Have a look at that if you're keen on starting the trad thing. I'm not an expert. Anyone who out there listening, if they reckon I sound like one, I'm not. But with the recurve thing, definitely focus on your form before you focus about your aiming and your groups, because your form has to be there. That's one of them. And then the other one I would say is as early as you are able to, start to think about building your arrows and tuning your arrows, because when I had my compound, I could, for the most part, had the bow tuned to the arrows, whereas with the recurve, especially when you're talking about hunting weight recurves, like in that 50 or 55 pound range and higher, you can't really get arrows heavy enough to be heavy enough to be good for that bow without building them yourself in some way or another. You can't just buy a standard Eastern Power Flight with a aluminium insert and then be in the weight range. So I'd say think about building your arrows as soon as you can, and think more about your form in the beginning than about where your arrows are really going, if that makes sense.
With that, the form side of things, were you kind of just taking shots at 5 meters just so you're just keeping the repetitiveness of going through your technique?
I was living in town at the time, shooting at about 10 yards. I was thinking too much about my groups, so it took a little bit longer for my forms to come along. And like everybody that I suppose you hear about, I started a bit heavy with the trad bow, so I injured my shoulder a little bit, which I've overcome okay, but you just can't. It takes a long time. It's one of those things where if you're going to pick it up, you just have to be totally comfortable with the idea that it might be several months before you're starting to feel confident. And that's not to say you might not pick it up pretty quickly, but like one of my mates, he's sort of like deadly with a compound. He picked up a recurve recently and he's already killed heaps more stuff than me, like heaps more stuff. It's not a competition. He's just killed a heap, but he's got the hunting skills down pat, and he's got a lot of the mechanics of his form down pat anyway. So if you're fairly new, just start really close, do a lot with your eyes closed. So you're thinking a little bit more about things that aren't associated with what you're seeing necessarily. And if you've got the money to spare, get the Tom Clum course on the Push website, because that's bloody good too.
I was going to say really their podcast coach. Is really good, right? Like it's a really good thing for insights.
100%, man.
I've never listened to it myself.
Really good, dude.
That's crazy for me to even say that, but I've literally talked to so many people that listen to it that have given me tips based on recurve that they've heard it. Oh yeah, I heard it on the Push podcast. I'm like, that's great. And so I've learned lots of it secondhand.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, it's helped me plenty, and I go through that course, like different parts of it, every couple of months. Like it was about $200 American, I believe. Totally money well spent, in my opinion, especially when I was working from home and I sort of wasn't traveling as much. Yeah, but just be comfortable with the fact that it's going to take a little bit longer, and be thinking about getting your form to a point where you can start to tune your arrows, because once you can tune your arrows and build them the way you want to build them, it just gives you a hell of a lot more confidence.
Definitely. And on the shoulder side of things, build your lats. Like if you can strengthen your lats up, you won't have shoulder issues. So bent over rows, lat pull downs, things like that, they're going to help out a lot. But I think what you see a lot with any sort of lat stuff, when people are trying to do lat stuff, is that they activate their traps. So if we're talking like about the anatomy of the body here, your traps are the ones that sit on top of your shoulders, whereas the lat is the one that sits on the side of the back. And that wing, or that lat, latissimus dorsi, what we want to do is really strengthen it. And what happens is so many people, when they try to do lats, is that they shrug first, and so their trap takes all of the pull, and so they don't actually get anything out of the lat pulling. So what you really want to focus on is make sure that the lat's back and down, and really trying to fire that side of the back or the wing as much as you can. Yeah,
man. Yeah, no, what I was actually doing, I'd get into my back really well once I was drawing, and then when I hit my anchor, I was pulling with my shoulder directly away from the arrow, whereas I was actually jamming my shoulder this way.
Yeah,
people can't see on the video, but I essentially injured like the spot under my collarbone and gave myself something called bursitis.
Yeah,
and I thought that I had good back tension, because every time I'd watch videos, I'd see my hand going backwards, and your hand going backwards assists with your arrow coming out fairly cleanly. But what you actually want to be thinking about is pulling your elbow behind your back and having tension go behind you. And once I saw that being explained, it just
Made a lot
stopped
of
injuring
sense.
my shoulder completely. But again, like, I mean, that could be a whole other podcast talking about stuff in the gym, because I'm in the gym all the time. I'm hardly an expert. I just, but again, like I only go to the gym to lift weights so I can be a better hunter.
Yeah.
In terms of drawing the bow and lifting heavy loads. So, plenty of back exercises and leg exercises and all that sort of stuff to try and bulletproof myself from injury is good.
Definitely. It's the way to do it. All righty. Well, thanks heaps for your time, Dylan. Really appreciate it. And once again, they can find you at _wilderlife_.
Cool, man. Cheers.
Appreciate it, dude. Thanks heaps. That wraps up this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining us, team. If you did have any topics, questions, or you wanted to suggest a guest for Becoming a Bow Hunter, you can send me an email at matty@becomingabowhunter.com. If you're enjoying the show or you've enjoyed in particular episodes, please do me a solid and share it around with your friends. If you are not already, please hit the subscribe button, as the more subscribers we get, the higher the podcast gets ranked, and that definitely helps out for showing it to other individuals. If you are not already following me on Instagram, it's at becomingabowhunter.podcast, and on YouTube, it's Becoming a Bow Hunter. Get out, team, fling some arrows, get that practice in, and walk those yards in the paddocks until you find those critters. That is it for now, but not the last time that you'll hear from Becoming a Bow Hunter.